Okay, sorry for the hang up. Something went wrong. And for some reason, I'll give it a moment here for people to catch up, or I can do I may as well do the opener. There was a delay because of something that happened with not Restream, with StreamYard just now. But again, welcome to Coffee Talk. Yeah, I'm all screwed up now. Welcome to Coffee Talk. It is time for Coffee Talk Live, where you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube most of the time, unless something goes wrong. I've been sitting here talking and didn't realize I wasn't on because for some reason it didn't connect. And then I noticed the prompt and I was like, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. You can, if you are listening anywhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk Live, and on Prepper University at Coffee Talk Live at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, being joined today by two felines in the room. We've got Granny Smith and Monkey are in here having a Mexican standoff. There's Granny Smith and there's Monkey. And the problem is actually that little pink spring. That little pink thing you see on the floor is a spring. It's a little plastic spring, and they both like to play with it, but they don't like for the other cat to have it. So we're just going to sit here and stare at it until somebody gives in. That's what's going on back there. Naturally, I do try to acknowledge as many of the people who come in as I can. So I'll go ahead and say hello to some of the people that have chimed in so far today. I see Jimmy is with us, as well as Helter. All people who apparently is having some trouble with Google and the Alphabet Mafia there. Dragon, Brian, Casey, Jeff, JJ, Kimberly, Lucky, and Fluke Man have joined us here today. Glad you all could come in as we get ready to jump off and take a look at what's going on in the world today and discuss what's the realm of the ridiculous, as I like to call it. And we will get to that thumbnail. You know, I like to try to put up a thumbnail that ties in with what we're doing. I see Coffee Girl has joined us. Glad you could make it, Coffee Girl. Everybody, one more look. Granny Smith. And where is he? Monkey. And that damn spring that they're waiting to see who's going to make a move first. So if you hear a ruckus, you'll know what happened. And I see Tuck is here, as well as Peter. He says, welcome to the Civil War. Is there one? Is there one? Well, we're going to start. If we're going to do that, we may as well start in Canada. This happened while we were doing the live yesterday. So I didn't get too much of a chance to talk about it. And this is an Associated Press article. Ex-central banker to replace Trudeau as Canada's prime minister after winning Liberal Party vote. Did people actually vote for this guy? Or did the party vote for him? Is that how it works? Former central banker Mark Carney will become Canada's next prime minister after the governing Liberal Party elected him its leader Sunday as the country deals with U.S. President Trump's trade war and annexation threat, and federal election looms. Okay, so is he interim prime minister until there is an election? How does that work? And obviously, Donald Trump, I don't know why, he probably never should have said it. If you heard him, and I've played the clip and we've talked about it, okay, Peter says the people vote for the party and the party selects the leader. That's not very, that doesn't work out very well for the people, obviously. That when he said that he was going to annex Canada, he was being sarcastic. You could hear it in his voice. He's not planning on just going and taking over Canada. That's not going to happen. But the media just really wants to harp on that. Carney, 59, replaces Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation in January but remains Prime Minister until his successor is sworn in the coming days. Carney won in a landslide, winning 85.9% of the vote. That's a shame, though, if that's the way that works, because the people get stuck with whatever the party gives them then. And that's what Joe says. He says, the hell with Canada, basically. Sven said, chainsaw bar line is plugged. Thank goodness I almost forgot to log on. Okay. And that Canada is for sale, but America has been for a long time. Canada's been for sale for a while. And this has been building up for a long time. He says, Carney, this is a quote. Whoa, good Lord, hold still. There is someone who is trying to weaken our economy. Donald Trump, as we know, has put unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, and how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses. We cannot let him succeed, and we won't. No, he's attacking the Canadian government for allowing problems that are affecting the United States. That's what it is. Because the whole problem started because of how many people are pouring over the northern border. We shouldn't have people from like the Congo and Afghanistan crossing in from Canada illegally into the United States and hiding out here. That shouldn't happen, and that's his primary problem. Says Carney said Canada will keep retaliatory tariffs in place until the Americans show respect. So he punishes Canadian people, and you complain about that, but your solution is to try to punish American people. But to be clear, we really don't get very much from Canada outside of maple syrup. Honestly, we don't really import that much from Canada. They get more from us than we get from them. Ultimately, they'll lose this. And all ultimately that Trump wanted as part of the negotiations was to just make sure the border was secured, stop letting so many people flow in. Chillin has joined us. JJ says, while DJT is attacking the Canadian government, douchebag media outlets will twist it into an attack on the average Canadian. Exactly. Which is all that Carney is doing here. And that's all that Trudeau has done. He doesn't have a problem with the Canadian people. He doesn't have a problem necessarily with the Canadian people. And Canada, before all of this, had massive tariffs on the United States on cheese and dairy products and all kinds of stuff. They already had huge tariffs, and they have massive import taxes that they levy against their own people, duties that people have to pay on goods that come into the country. Like I had said, I know people who live in Canada that are big comic book collectors, and they keep a P.O. box in the United States and go and pick the stuff up because it's easier than having it delivered and risking having the Canadian government search through their goods and charge them a massive amount for import tax. And then, of course, just taking the risk of driving across the border and actually being stopped, because if you're stopped, you don't want to lie, they'll strip your car. They'll strip your car down. It's incredible. And that's what Peter says. Canada has 250% tariffs on the U.S. products, but cry when the USA adds tariffs. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Coffee Girl said Trudeau is out, or at least mostly. Yeah, but if the party that installed him and kept them there is still in power, it doesn't change much. Joe said build a border around Massachusetts, New York, and Minnesota in exchange for Alberta. Okay. And Raccoon has joined us. Glad you could make it today. So here's Carney. It says Carney navigated. Hold still. There's something wrong with the something. That's not me moving it up and down. That's something wrong with the page. It says Carney said Canada will. Okay, Carney navigated crises when he was head of the Bank of Canada, and when in 2013 he became the first non-citizen to run the Bank of England since it was founded in 1694. His appointment won bipartisan praise in the UK after Canada recovered from the 2008 financial crisis faster than many other countries. The opposition Conservatives hope to make the election about Trudeau, whose popularity declined as food and housing prices rose and immigration surged. And those are huge problems there. You ever watch like House Hunters or anything like that? Look at the ones in Canada. Is there even a house out there that's not at least $1 million? The home prices there are insane. It doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. Chillen says he worked with carpenters in Massachusetts. They were from Canada and went back at retirement because of their health care. And Coffee said Carney's path to power through party insiders, not the ballot box. So much for democracy. Yeah. Yeah. And Peter suggests Justin will still just pull strings from behind the scenes like Obama did with Biden. And Joe says a shack in Canada cost $1 million. Yeah. And Joe says, I see Canadians coming to America for healthcare because the wait time in Canada is years and they offer euthanasia. Correct. If you can even, again, bringing it up, I know people who collect comics that live in Canada. And one guy in particular is a big comic collector who is the one I talk about that had the car accident. He told me that story where he had had a head injury in the car accident, went to the hospital, and he was in the waiting room for 2 days. And that was with a document that he received that gave him accelerated access. So he was still there 48 hours with an accelerated access form. And while he was waiting there, he said someone died in the waiting room. Yeah, that's your Canadian healthcare. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And of course, there's Stefan Molyneux that does the philosophy stuff on YouTube. A lot of people are familiar with him, who had cancer and came to the US to get treated and paid for it out of pocket because he thought that they would kill him in Canada. He thought that he would die getting surgery in Canada because of how incompetent it is. As we move on here, this I predicted. Another David from Coffee Talk prediction. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and it was when the prisons went on strike, or the prison guards went on strike in New York. Well, there are no more prison guards in New York. They fired everybody. Fox News article coming up here. Anytime, StreamYard, let's go. New York fires more than 2,000 prison guards for refusing to return to work after illegal strike. I saw that coming. The union played a trump card and lost. They lost. And Johnny is here. He says listening with headphones and driving. And Tuck suggests that Molyneux would have experienced extreme malpractice in Canada. Yeah, and they would have got away with it. New York officials fired more than 2,000 prison guards on Monday for not returning to work after a week-long strike. Enough correctional officers had returned to work for the state to declare an end to the Wildcat strike, a labor action that violated a state law prohibiting strikes by most of public employees. After 22 days of an illegal strike, the governor and I are happy to report it is now ended. Corrections Commissioner Daniel Marticello said during a virtual press briefing. The state and the guards union, the New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association, reached a new deal to end the strike over the weekend, but it was contingent on at least 85% of staff returning to work by Monday morning. While the 85% goal was not met, Marticello said that the state would honor some of the agreement's provisions, including on overtime. Marticello said the National Guard would remain in place because, remember, the National Guard had to be deployed to the prisons to fill in for the guards who were missing. In place at prisons to support staff while the department pursues an aggressive recruiting campaign to bring in additional employees, Governor Kathy Hochul had deployed the National Guard to some prisons to fill in for striking workers. Conyers. Said about 10,000 security staff are available to work in prisons across the state, down from 13,500 before the Wildcat strike. Termination letters have been sent to over 2,000 officers who remained on strike. And this is fascinating because, again, it's illegal for them to strike. As I pointed out, it's illegal for them to strike. And I was like, they're going to lose their jobs. And the union set them up for it. They didn't all lose their jobs, but 2,000 people being fired across the state is a big deal. And now they're scrambling to replace those people. Now they're going to get people who are not necessarily suited for the job. These people let the union talk them into this, and the union allowed for the termination of those employees as part of that that what they perceived to be a better contract. Now tell me the union's looking out for the workers. I'm waiting. They allowed for that as part of the negotiations. They anticipated, I'm sure, that some of these people were going to lose their jobs. How's that looking out for the workers? Isn't that what the union proposes to do? Isn't that their big claim? No, we's protecting the workers. We's looking out for the little guy. Know what I mean? Yeah. All the way to the unemployment line. If they can even get unemployment under their union contract, because sometimes you can't. Especially if you were terminated for something that you did that was in violation of your contract. In this case, it's illegal for them to strike, and they went on strike and they were fired. They're not getting unemployment, even if their contract allows for it. They're just screwed. They're just screwed. Brian says, sounds more like job abandonment than being fired. Peter said, Long Island audits exposing the prisons. He's been there trying to get answers about guards murdering inmates. Strike was due to one of the guards being charged for murder. Yeah, and I'd read into that too, because there are several guards who are under investigation for murders in prisons in New York. And Joe said Canada's replaced native population with millions of Indians and Pakistanis who lack basic hygiene and civilized manners, like waiting in line or using a toilet and washing hands. Oh, God. And Tuck said they'll be replaced by immigrants at a fraction of the pay. Possibly. But this is another example of a union screwing people over. And again, I did tie that in a couple of weeks ago when we first read these stories, that there were guards that are under investigation for killing prisoners, and that was tied together. Unfortunately, JJ said, meanwhile, fat cat union bosses will go back home to their comfy mansions, no skin off their teeth over the firings. Exactly. Because those guys make a lot of money, and I'm sure they're stealing too. I'm sure they're also stealing. And that's a shame. We remember when the dock workers strike happened, and they focused on that one guy, that loudmouth who was in charge of the union, and his multi-million-dollar mansion and all of his cars and all the money he has and his yacht and everything else. And because of him, there'll be less jobs because of that strike. There'll be less jobs because the companies are going to replace more of those workers with automated systems. And unlike most places, again, where in many jobs, it's some dirty little job no one cares about that gets replaced. On shipping ports and loading docks, they start top down. So they're putting in automated cranes and things like this, places where normally a worker would get a six-figure salary. Those are the guys that'll be losing their jobs. Incredible. But no, these unions, that's what kills me about unions, where they sit there and they pound their chest and pat themselves on the back and talk about, it's because of us that you got you got an 8 hour day, or because you got a 40 hour work week, or because there ain't kids working in coal mines. And it's like, no, it's not because of you. You didn't do a damn thing. It's because of people in other unions over a century ago fighting for those things. What you are and what they were are in a whole another world. It is not the same. You have no right to claim that. That's like me claiming the victory for the Revolutionary War. I wasn't there. I had nothing to do with it. All I can do is benefit from it because I'm in the United States now, and all these union bosses can do is benefit from something that was set up by somebody else that has been twisted over the years. Peter said, "Remember, the left pushes unions, green agenda, eugenics, socialism. There was also a group of people in the 30s that had these beliefs." True, especially the eugenics. That is true. And Tuck says, agreed, modern union members saying those things just confirms my belief. They're cults. As we get into this article ties in with the thumbnail. Washington Examiner, House Democrats retreat, gives cautious first glimpse of future leadership and chance for a reset. And that's the image I used for the thumbnail. And that is actually a group of Democrats. There's Al Green, the guy who was thrown out of Congress. And when he got sanctioned, when they censored him in Congress for his outburst, his embarrassing outburst, where he had to be removed by security detail, where all these wishy-washy, pathetic Democrats that are standing with him now wrapped their arms around him and locked hands and saying, "We shall overcome," while he was being sentenced. Absolutely pathetic. There's Maxine Waters, Mrs. Take a Can of Soup Home for Your Family, which actually is sedition, right? Is it sedition? Or what's the term I'm looking for? When you incite people to violence against the government, which is a felony. I never saw her spend a day in jail. Lucky said, "That's a shame. I used to like his music." Not the same Al Green. It's a different Al Green. And they have the sign there. And I thought this was particularly interesting. And it's making fun of Doge by changing the anagram. It says Department of Government Evil. And I think it's ironic. These are the people holding that sign because they are the Department of Government Evil. That should be their moniker. That should be their personal sign, because these people, their entire career, have been race baiters, have been thieves. I'm sure they're stealing, misappropriating funds. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. Have not demonstrated actually doing their job. Always in the press, stirring up mess. Always picking fights and feuds with people. Always encouraging activism, inciting mess. They're the Department of Government Evil. That sign fits them perfectly while they're trying to make fun of Doge. And why are you making fun of Doge? Because you might get audited? I thought you had nothing to hide. See, if they were auditing anyone else, these guys would be all for it. And Kimberly said sedition. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it. Flukeman said, watched a documentary about prisoners in the 90s. Criminals and guards had an agreement. Guards accept drugs from visitors to pass on to the prisoners and got paid thousands. Peter says if prison guards can't strike by law, then what's the point of the union anyways? Good question, but you can't work in New York if you're not part of a union. It's a required state. Like when I worked in Illinois, I've talked about it before. I worked at UPS. They wouldn't let me finish my application until I filled out a union card. It was required by law. You can't work. You can't work unless you're in a union. And New York is very strict on that. It's a union state. It's not a right to work state. That's really the difference. That's really the difference of the right to work state. Right to work means that you can't be forced into a union. Tuck says the left can't meme. Yeah, because they basically memed themselves with this sign because they are evil. Oh, and there's that purple-haired witch on the left in the corner there. I almost missed her. The troll. The old bridge troll from like New Hampshire or wherever the hell she's a representative from. With her grubby purple hair. She probably smells like mothballs. And yeah, sedition. That's a felony. That's a felony offense. Inciting people to violence against a government entity. And that's it is a felony. It's an incarcerated felony. You can go to jail for that. But I never saw Maxine Waters in jail for telling people to, because everybody knows what that means. Telling people to come to the protests and make sure you bring cans of soup for your family. That is encouraging violence. Because, and if you don't know what that means, I'll get really quickly here. Cans of soup or cans of vegetables are very popular to be thrown in riots. Very popular item to be thrown in a riot. They're cheap to purchase and they can travel for a long distance and actually do a lot of damage because of the liquid inside the canister. You'll do more damage with a can of soup or vegetables or beans or whatever than you will throwing rocks. And all people thinks it's funny. They saying we shall overcome. Yeah, and the House Speaker was trying to tell him to shut up so he could finish his sentence. He was like, "Will you knock that off, please? We shall overcome." Yeah, because they're so oppressed. They're so oppressed. Raccoon says they have a coworker who, in a Philly prison, he said it was really corrupt and some guards were on the take. I wouldn't be surprised. JJ said, no doubt union dues were taken out of your paycheck. Yes, I had no choice. And Kimberly wants to know if I watch the purple-haired lady's videos. I've talked about her a few times. Well, she's purple-haired. Yeah, I've talked about her a few times on the channel. She's crazy. She's really mental. Just like Maxine and Nancy Pelosi, they don't need to be there anymore. They've long outlived their usefulness if they ever were useful. If they ever were useful. And Lucky said mothballs. Yeah, she smells like mothballs, and she probably has a purse full of those little blue menthol candies that old women always have. That's what it is. Chillin said unions had a place. Now I'm not so sure. Yeah, they used to. It had its importance. 120 years ago, when you had 5-year-olds working manual labor, yeah, it had its place. Not now. Not now. Monkey has joined us. And Fluke Man said, at least the sign doesn't say, listen to us, we're the good guys. When people say that, it's so annoying and obviously fake. But that's what's being suggested here. I didn't even read the article. I couldn't get past the image. It says House Democrats are heading. Hold still. This thing is bouncing a lot. House Democrats are particularly chastening weak that saw their resistance efforts routinely mocked and one of their own censored for his behavior during President Trump's address to Congress, and that would be Al Green again. but the week offers a first popular glimpse of possible 2028 leaders who may be able to help drag Democrats out of the funk they've been in since Trump's November win over then Vice President Kamala Harris. Leadership is turning to three Democratic governors of states won by Trump last fall: Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Andy Beshear of Kentucky, and Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro is a piece of shit. And he's under investigation, as is Tim Walz, because Tim Walz, when he was in charge of the Department of Education's union in Michigan, third and fourth party funneled millions of dollars to Shapiro for his campaign illegally. And there's been an open investigation for a couple of years. It hasn't gone anywhere, but they did it, and that's shady, and it's illegal. All three will speak at the issues on their approaches. Hold still. All three will speak at the issues retreat on their approaches to governing a state that President Trump carried in 2024. So I don't know why these people think that they're somehow going to pull things together, because they're going to have a conference with three Democrat governors. Big deal. What are these people going to run for president next time and lose? Like Tim Walz is being considered to run for president in 2028. Tampon Tim, you think anybody's going to vote for that guy? He's so manly. All conservatives will love him because he's an outdoorsman. Mr. I can't load a shotgun. Oh my God. Oh my God. And Lucky, there you go. He says, I thought Hansel and Gretel took care of her. Nope, she got away. Cruising is here. He said unions are unions being anything more than local is pointless. I've had to represent abused employees as the union rep. They're still needed when there's an employment monopoly like public schools. A good example that just happened here: the school district forced teachers to provide coverage and then breached the contract by refusing to pay. The union managed to get the teachers that money. Okay. JJ said, speaking of the old purple-haired troll, she reminds me of the Skeksis from Dark Crystal. I've heard that reference to her before. But yeah, she is old, evil, ugly woman, seen waters. Sometimes, and these people look mean and evil and nasty, and it fits. It absolutely fits. They don't look honest. They don't look trustworthy. They look cruel. And they are cruel bullies. I'm surprised not to see Bernie Sanders standing in that crowd. I'm surprised. We're going to jump to a New York Post article. Speaking of corrupt leadership, I give you Gavin Newsom. New York Post: Gavin Newsom bailed out utility responsible for the California wildfires after collecting 6 figures in donations. Oh, is that how it works? California Governor Gavin Newsom bailed out his state's biggest utility, which caused some of the Golden State's worst wildfires, after being showered in hundreds of thousands in donations from executives, according to a scorching assessment of his leadership in a new book. Instead, he opted to go after oil and gas companies over climate change claims. Quote, Newsom holds oil and gas companies responsible for wildfires, but not the utilities that caused most of them, after he and his wife raked in hundreds of thousands in donations, according to Suzanne Crabtree and Jed McFadder in their muckraking book, quote, fool's gold, the radical con artists and traders who killed the California dream and now threaten us all. The authors note Newsom, a potential 2028 Democrat presidential contender. I don't think that'll happen. Filed a lawsuit against oil and gas companies alleging they misled the public about climate change, which contributes to conditions for wildfires. But Newsom went easy on a monopolistic utility, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, PG&E, according to authorities. While blaming the oil companies for contributing to climate change, he failed to hold PG&E and other utilities accountable for wildfires that spewed record amounts of carbon and other toxic smoke into the area, the authors said in the book to be released this week. PG&E pleaded guilty in 2024 to 84 counts of involuntary manslaughter in wildfires that destroyed the Northern California town of Paradise in 2018. The blaze, named the Camp Fire, ignited because of a downed PG&E power line on November 8, 2018, burning more than 153,000 acres and leveling 13,500 homes that killed 85 people. But far from holding the massive utility accountable, Newsom spearheaded a legislative bankruptcy deal that allowed for the utility to continue operating and signed a $21 billion new insurance protection for PG&E into law. Must be nice. Must be nice. This is greasing palms all the way. That's how Newsom works. That's how it works. Sven said when a felony is committed, there's no requirement for the union to represent. Walz still pushed representation. And Lucky said how much was paid to shut off the fire hydrants. Yeah, who knows? Who knows where that water went or what the hell was going on with all of that? But I mean, they've lost so much money. Really, that whole state needs to be put under all the leadership in that state needs to be suspended and an interim government put in its place and a complete state audit run. Look what's happened in the last couple of years. And it's always in the 30s. 37 billion allocated to combating homelessness that they don't know what the money was spent on and they can't find it. 30 billion that they claim was hacked by the Chinese government that they can't track down. Another 33 or 34 billion that was for unemployment that wasn't paid and they can't find. And then all their COVID relief money is missing, or most of it. They don't know where that is either. So they've got to be hundreds of millions missing, or hundreds of billions of dollars probably missing. Where the hell is it? And what does Newsom know about it? What does Kamala Harris know about it? What does Nancy Pelosi know about it? Where is this leadership? Where is it? Or are they all airheads like the mayor of San Francisco, who looks dazed and confused in every picture I've seen? And then funny enough, PG&E, who just lost their grant for their solar array that didn't work, that they had collected billions for, never could get that damn thing to run properly. And then they just abandoned the project because the government's not going to give them any more money. And Peter says an InfoWars journalist was murdered. I did not see that. Tuck says California is a lost cause, and Vitalis said R.I.P. Jamie. Is that the InfoWars journalist? I did not see that story. Flukeman said PG&E, again, the company that purposely supplied the customers toxic water and threatened Brockovich to shut up or else. Yeah. PG&E again. But I just think that's interesting now. Apparently there's proof and it's in this book, Fool's Gold, that's coming out here. Radicals, con artists, and traitors who killed the California dream and now threaten us all. Might make for some interesting reading. Might make for some interesting reading. Incredible. While we're talking about wasting money, we may as well jump to another really popular politician. And this is going to be a Fox News article coming up here any second now. AOC, everybody. I give you AOC again, slapped with an ethics complaint over troubling expenses that were made to a dance company. A government accountability nonprofit is calling on the House to launch a probe into whether Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez misappropriated taxpayer-funded member allowances. I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did. Americans for Public Trust, a nonprofit and nonpartisan organization, sent letters to the Office of Congressional Ethics on Tuesday questioning several troubling expenses from AOC's disbursements, which they claim are in contravention of federal law and the standards of the House of Representatives. Each member of Congress, receives a member representative allowance, a budget for officials or official duties that may not be used for personal or campaign purposes, according to the Congressional Research Service. A odd member is being accused of using these funds for campaign purposes. AOC reportedly made a payment of $3,700 to a Juan Gonzalez, another for $850 to Bombazo Dance Company, with both expenditures described as being used for training. Training, huh? She learned how to dance. The progressive congresswoman has addressed the issue on social media, claiming in a post on X, responding to a claim that she is wasting tax dollars. 100% wrong, AOC writes. None of this is taxpayer money. This is FEC filing. Be loud and wrong about something else. Try again next time. The filing states that AOC's association or assertion, that these expenses are an FEC filing and not reflective of her MRA, as well as her claim that none of it is taxpayer money, is both troubling and obviously incorrect. Either she does not know the difference between her campaign funds and MRA, or more likely she knows the highlighted expenses were not for official business and should have been paid by her campaign and reported to the FEC. She knows, but she's going to pretend like she doesn't, and that's why she said that. That's why she said that. She knows, but she gave herself an out. She's not as dumb as she sounds. And those sound like, those sound like small amounts, but it's still your tax dollars, and it has to be spent properly. And it has to be accounted for, and there are people watching that. But yeah, again, she's not as dumb as she sounds, because that was clever. Oh no, this is MRA money. Okay, so now if it turns out that she did spend the money incorrectly, now she has an out. Now she can claim ignorance. Oh, I didn't realize. I'm so sorry. And she'll get a slap on the wrist for it. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. That's clever. That is clever. I mean, they will tell you that ignorance is no excuse of the law, but she'll get away with it. Same way that Fire Marshal Bowman got away with pulling that fire alarm in congressional session. If I had done that, and we talked about that a lot when it happened, I know Jamal Bowman, I call him Fire Marshal Bowman. He knew damn right well what he was doing, and we watched the video clip. You could clearly see him. He removed the signs, shut the alarm, or turned on the alarm and ran. He knew what he was doing, and he he ditched those signs in a waste container in the trash. But he said, "Oh, I didn't realize. I thought I was opening the door." Sure, sure, buddy. That was just to give himself an out, and he got away with that. You'd have gotten a year in jail, at least. Brian says they're not dumb, they just pretend to be to manipulate our mass population that is dumb enough to believe them and the media. Indeed. Indeed. But they're not half as dumb as they pretend. Not half as dumb as they pretend. Now this is this is from a magazine called Rough Draft. I wanted to pull this up. This is local news, but this kind of thing goes on all across the country, and it's pretty stupid. And I wanted to showcase it. This is again Rough Draft, Atlanta. Ground broken for Bowen Homes redevelopment in Northwest Atlanta. Okay, and here's their little concept drawing. Okay. It says ground was broken March 5th for the redevelopment of the Bowen Homes public housing site off Donald L. Hollowell Parkway in Northwest Atlanta. Phase 1 will feature 151 apartments with 2,000 units planned in the future. In a press release, Atlanta Housing said in the first phase will feature deeply affordable housing. 48 units for households earning 30% or below the median income, defined by HUD. 49,000 units for family earning up to 60%, 10 workforce housing units for essential professionals such as teachers, nurses, and first responders, 44 market rate units to promote economic diversity and integration. Supported in part by a $40 million HUD Choice Neighborhoods implementation grant and backed by over $523 million in public and private commitments, project is seen as a catalyst for broader revitalization along the Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway and James Jackson Parkway corridors, according to the Atlanta housing officials. Okay, here's the problem. Okay, this is what's there now. Once upon a time, and Marvel fan is here. Glad you could make it. Once upon a time, there was a mayor, can't remember her name. She destroyed all those housing projects and pushed everybody out and sanctioned them off. All right. And you see this all the time, and they call it wealth divides, where you've got the other side of the tracks. Here's a really rundown neighborhood, and here's a good neighborhood, right? That's done deliberately to keep these people separate because they don't mix. So all of that housing was destroyed and replaced, but it was forced to reintegrate, and those areas are now destroyed and actually quite dangerous to live in because of that reintegration. Now they want to do it again. They want to level it again, and they want to mix it up even further to create equality. I guarantee you, it says 48 units earning 30% or below median income, welfare recipients. Let's just call it what it is. And you think that you're going to have in that same neighborhood, on that same block, workforce housing units for essential professionals like teachers, nurses, and first responders? Those people don't want to live down there. They don't want to live down there. All of that was undone. That separation was undone during the Obama administration. And I've talked about it before. Before I was married, before my wife and I got married, she lived in Stone Mountain, okay, in a better middle class area. When they changed those regulations under the Obama administration, because he pushed for that, okay, Trump undid that law at the end of his last term. It went right under the radar. People missed it, but he undid that law. The forced integration allowed for Section 8 housing to be developed in that neighborhood. And from that point forward, when people started moving in, there was a rash of burglaries all through that area. Her house was broken into twice before she moved out because she just couldn't stay there anymore. People's pets were getting killed. Homes were getting broken into, burglarized. There's a reason why people are separated. I hate to say it, and I'm speaking from experience because again, I grew up in a housing project. Now I'm the apple that fell far from the tree, in a manner of speaking, but most don't. Most people will stay just like whatever it is they're exposed to in that neighborhood. That neighborhood was full of thieves, hustlers, drug addicts, all kinds of problems. You don't just take middle class people and stick them in that. And you don't take them and put them somewhere else and expect them to get better. It doesn't work. It does not work. These projects, how many times are housing developments like this going to be created so that we can watch them fail over and over and over again for decades before somebody gets it through their head that this doesn't work? How many times has something like this been done in the United States or in different parts of Europe, in the UK? How many times? And it's failed. Peter said, I thought the left was all about segregation. Yeah. Excuse me. All people said housing projects are a failure in the UK, where they're called council estates. In the USA, they plan to build for post 65 migrants. Yeah, it doesn't work. You can't integrate it because you're mixing elements. You're mixing elements, and this is your tax dollars. It's a $40 million HUD grant and another $523 million in grants and donations. So that's your tax dollars paying for this shit, paying for it. And like I said, I mean, I grew up in a housing project. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't the worst. There's some real bad ones in the Boston area, believe it. Mine wasn't too bad because a lot of the people that were in there were medical. I think almost everybody on the first floor was like elderly and handicapped people. And then there was a lot of Russians and a lot of Cubans in there. It wasn't as bad as it could have been. And then there was a section a little further up the street where the building was full of Haitians. Two buildings. There was a separate two buildings and then a long row and then another set of buildings. And I was in the middle row, but the two buildings on the left were all Haitian immigrants because a lot of them came to the US during the 70s. And those buildings were always completely trashed. They were always trashed. But you just can't take just anybody and put them somewhere and expect that they're just going to change overnight because they're in a better neighborhood. It doesn't work. Tuck said he grew up in a rundown house in a trailer park, but he'll always be a little bit trailer park. Okay. Okay, but I mean, if you grew up in that situation, you know what I mean. You can't just take everybody out of that trailer park and put them in like an upper middle class neighborhood and not expect some kind of clash any more than you would expect for somebody from an upper middle class neighborhood to, in the middle of that trailer park, build a $750,000 house and not have a problem. People are divided for a reason. They're divided for a reason. And for whatever reason, these politicians and these activists and these others, they don't seem to understand that. But then they don't have to deal with it because you're not going to these lawmakers' gated communities while they sit there and again, oh, I'm so wonderful. I'm integrating people. I'm getting people together. I've got all these welfare recipients mixed in with all these first responders and all these middle class workers, yeah, that's going to work up. So that's going to work out so well. That's not going to clash at all. That's not going to clash at all. And then, of course, there'll be no jealousy at all as to why it is you're paying a fortune for your unit, and then the guy right next door to you isn't paying at all because he's on welfare and they're paying for it. Your tax dollars are paying for him to live there. That's going to work out really well. Incredible. Incredible. Oh, by the way, before I forget, yesterday and today I put up new videos on the Coffee Talk channel, independent videos. I put one up today talking about when YouTube marks your video made for kids, which they've done to me. Marked a video made for kids, and you can get into serious trouble for that. And I question, why is it that YouTube somehow believes this is supposed to help protect anyone, because they tell you it's to make the community safer, but when they change a video to made for kids, it can't be found in regular searches. So you take a video that, just follow my logic here really quickly, you take a video that would be safe for a child to watch and you sanction it so they can't find it, but do nothing about all the other garbage that's on YouTube that they can see. So my 5-year-old can watch Sexy Red, but he can't find a Warner Brothers cartoon. See what I'm saying? That's not a conflict of interest somehow. And then the one I put up yesterday was another Bible talk about whether or not animals have souls, which I think is pretty interesting. So if anybody's interested in that, those two videos independently went up on Coffee Talk yesterday and today. I need all the help I can get watching the videos, because YouTube isn't going to circulate them. Nobody's going to see those videos, I'm sure. I think the one I put up yesterday has only got like 50 views on it. Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it goes, folks. When ScrewTube doesn't like you, you can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel it. Indeed. Absolutely, indeed. So yeah, all the support I can get, much appreciated. Peter said nothing will change until they release the Epstein, JFK, etc. files. We are still waiting. And Lucky says, funny, I just got a puppy last night. Excellent. Excellent. I do believe they have a soul. And I explained why using the Bible in yesterday's video. In yesterday's video. But I do believe that these animals do have souls, and that they ought to be treated a lot better than they are. They ought to be treated a lot better than they are by people. And Sven says ScrewTube is despicable. Yeah, they are. Well, they treat all of their content creators badly. You know what it is? I'm thinking about maybe doing a live stream on the hobby channel later today. I might, on Open by Chance on the other channel. Yeah, Sven said there is biblical punishment for animal cruelty. Yeah, there's a reason for that. There is a reason for that. I believe they do have souls, and I can demonstrate it in Genesis. When you read the proper translation, because most Bibles don't translate a lot of the words or passages correctly. You got to go to the oldest possible translations. But anyway, I might do a live stream, because you know what it is with YouTube, Google, Alphabet. It's the 800-pound gorilla. It's gotten so big, they feel like they can do whatever the hell they want. And basically they can't, because how do you challenge them? You really can't. There's nothing you can do. I can't afford to take them to court. I can't waste the next 10 years of my life and tens of thousands of dollars in court fighting with YouTube for whatever pittance that I collect from the AdSense. But there's your debt clock with Doge just hitting 189 billion in projected savings. 189 billion dollars. Fantastic. And it says savings per taxpayer, $1,682. Again, projected. And the U.S. national debt clock is getting slower. I know that ticker is not going as fast as it used to. It is getting slower, although it's still a massive monster debt. It's massive. But with that, we are at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start signing off. And again, the hobby channel, I'll tell you where that is there. It's Ad Open by Chance. If you put in Ad Open by Chance, you'll find it. So again, we were at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start signing off. You are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and on Coffee Talk and Prep University. You can find me on Fistful of Radio, there it is, .com, podcasting out of Atlanta. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. Oh, and all people said your hobby channel is cool. You and your wife are great. We are great together. I don't know what I would do without her because she's a really good fit. She's a really good fit for me. We get along great. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will catch you again tomorrow.